Yes, guys, and welcome back to the BrokeCast. It's episode 5. We took a week out last week, but we've come back with an absolute banger because it's crazy right now. What's going on in the market is nuts, but I'm not going to say we didn't tell you so because we told them so.
We told you so.
Look, we've got the newsletter plea. We'll pop this right up right here. This was written 2 to 3 weeks ago, but obviously we've been speaking about this narrative since like last year, back end of last year.
Back end of last year.
And obviously Will's been tweeting left, right and centre about it. We'll pop a few of his tweets up right now just to show you guys about that. But yeah, it's gone crazy. We've smashed through those liquidations at $32,000 to $33,000 and we've experienced a small short squeeze up to 35k, and now we're currently, at the time of recording this, retesting those 35k marks. What's next? What's going to happen? That's what we're going to discuss in this episode, whilst also discussing some other things you guys might be interested in. But what are your thoughts of what's going on right now, and how does it fit into your narrative?
Feels nice.
You feel nice?
Feels nice.
The Bitcoin all-time highs could be coming, guys.
Feels nice. Look, I went out on a limb since the end of last year and said that I thought we'd see an all-time high for crypto, well, specifically Bitcoin in 2023. I looked like pretty much a bit of an idiot for most of the year. My thesis was that there are a few things that went into my thesis. My thesis essentially was that people were caught to the short side in 2021, 2022 sort of area, when we had that big pullback in 2022. I thought there's a lot of fear in the markets in general and that there'll be volatility on both sides of the trade. I thought that people, as they panicked into short selling, when the market started to rebound, they probably panic into like FOMO into a rally. We're still yet to quite see that, but I think we're just about at that FOMO sort of phase. Obviously, it's a big call when you're sitting at like I think we came into the year at like maybe $15,000 to $18,000. I made a plea in like October of last year for people to buy before the FTX collapsed, saying like at about 18k. Now's the time to buy some Bitcoin. FTX then collapsed, flushed us down to 15,500, but that was the absolute bottom. Now we're sitting at like 35k, and I'm not sitting here saying I told you so, but what I am sitting here saying is have a look at when people are saying something contrary to what the narrative is and why they're saying that, and include that into your investment plan, like whether I'm going to be right in the future or not, like time's yet to tell. However, the whole narrative, even the bulls in this case, have been saying, look, yeah, we are going to see all-time highs, but we're not going to see that until after the halving, when an ETF gets approved, and presume the ETF, because the SEC have like pushed back every single date, presume that was going to be the last possible date for an ETF, which for ARK Invest is early January, or for BlackRock is going to be in March. However, I just said that, again, just going against the narrative, that very easily we could see an ETF before that. Why would we not be able to see one before that? Just because the SEC have been so bearish so far, but they've got a lot of pressure on them. We've seen Ripple and XRP win their suit against the SEC, well, specifically XRP, the ongoing case is still with Ripple. We then saw the SEC drop its case against Ripple executives, whilst in between that they filed an appeal to the XRP decision, which got denied. So the SEC have started to have some doors slammed in their face. There's some pressure being put on Gary Gensler. He's been put in front of the Financial Services Committee. He's been given subpoenas potentially now by the US government. So he's got to do something to take some heat off himself. He then also didn't appeal the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust decision, which is where the judge basically said that Grayscale Bitcoin Trust could be converted into a spot Bitcoin ETF unless the SEC had some other knowledge that the judge didn't know about within 45 days. They didn't say anything, they didn't appeal, and that was like last week. There was then a fake release of a Bitcoin ETF that came out. I normally feel when things like this happen, like although they are, like in this case that was a spoof, they normally do lead to the right outcome, like whether that comes in a week or a month or 2 months or whatever. Like we saw it with the Ripple SEC case. These are obviously just two tiny subsections of what could happen, but I feel like I've played this game before in crypto where everyone's been one side of the fence and then crypto or Bitcoin specifically surprises everyone. And even the bulls, like I said, even the bulls were like, oh, we're not going to see all-time high until this time. like almost playing it by the book, and things never get played by the book, especially when institutional money like this BlackRock ETF that potentially is coming out that may have been listed on the NASDAQ or at least have the pre-filings for the NASDAQ now that's being talked about. When institutionals are involved, like, it never goes to the way that people think it's going to go, and that's why I thought that we could see all-time highs this year. The only thing that I've been worried about, and sorry before I've just been ranting, but the only thing I've been worried about specifically is liquidity and where that's going to come from. However, we've seen different liquidity crises this year, from wars to the gilt market collapse to banks collapse in the US, and as a whole we've seen Bitcoin rally. We also saw Bitcoin rally specifically off the banking collapses in the US, which Raoul Pal actually just posted a tweet about, basically saying that the index that tracks US banks is at an all-time low, which is where the last sort of banks failed. That Bitcoin then rallied when we saw the last banks fail. Bitcoin then actually also rallied off the initiation of this conflict between Israel and Palestine, Gaza area. And then you've got like big asset managers like BlackRock and Larry Fink coming out basically saying Bitcoin can be used, or crypto in general, he actually said, can be used as a flight to quality in times of uncertainty, which is basically what we've seen from the market already. And if you guys don't believe that BlackRock have already been buying Bitcoin when it was at like 15K, then I don't know what you're looking at. I actually did a tweet maybe 4 months ago, showing that every single time Bitcoin price in history has touched the 200-day moving average, BlackRock have put FUD out against Bitcoin at the 200-day moving average mark, and I presume that's probably where they've been accumulating. And in this cycle, we actually broke below the 200-day, and BlackRock were FUDing Bitcoin. So now we're pushing up, potentially going to see a BlackRock ETF. These guys have already got their bags full, in my opinion. They just want you to pump it up.
Of course, yeah. Things are changing rapidly as well. And I feel like we're on the cusp of seeing that stage where people are FOMOing into the market. Even bulls are starting to FOMO into the markets right now because, like Will said, the greater narrative is the fact that we were going to trade sideways until the halving and then head up towards a potential bull run, which is like actually something that I was saying as well, even in, I think it was a previous episode or the one before, because that's just the general consensus of the market. I feel like that's been the general like narrative over the past like year or two. People just assume that was going to happen, but it ultimately comes back to what we've been saying pretty much every episode, and that is that the majority are never correct. When has the market ever played out to the way that everyone thought it would play out? Not everyone, the majority can't win basically. No. And everyone gets caught wrong-footed. Like, you know, I'm not a seasoned investor, but I know that from what people have told me and people I've watched on YouTube or whatever, is that the majority of people don't win. And yeah, I feel like we're starting to FOMO win. Things are changing. Like Will was just saying there, he's pretty much covered everything in terms of the way Gary Gensler's kind of changing his tune right now. Yes, we might see some sort of negative news come out with the ETF, maybe, obviously. That can't be ruled out yet. Like, there might be some sort of, you know, appeal come, I don't know. Anything can kind of happen, really. People are starting to voice that opinion on Twitter now that they're looking for maybe a bit of bad news to come in at this point. But I feel like this negative, the negative news has just been ingrained in everyone to the point where it's almost too good to be true at this point that Bitcoin can go on from 35K to 48K, because you need to just honestly sit back and look at the charts and see how fast Bitcoin moved in the previous bull market. And if that happens now, we could see all-time highs by the time December comes along.
Well, what you've got to think is that everybody's been sitting in this position for what, like 2 to 3 years, where every single rally, everyone's like, nah, this isn't the rally. Yeah. This isn't the rally. We're going to go back down. And to be fair, even on the rallies that we do have, like, there is normally some news that knocks it back a little bit, liquidates some people who are excess longs or people who are late to try and long whatever crypto it is. So those things could always happen. Like, it's crypto, then I feel like the markets are pretty manipulated. Like, we've seen that and discussed that before. I can't say for definite whether that happens because we don't have any proof, but
there is
being in this space. Yeah, so there's probably potentially always something that could happen. But then on the opposite side of that, crypto is this space where, like we were saying, like, people just do not believe. Like, now, there's not many people out there who are just like, yeah, it's just going to keep going up. Yeah. Like, it's the most illogical thing you can think.
That's what I mean.
Like, you're at like the other day I was speaking to a friend and then I said I've gone long on Bitcoin at 30k and they were like, lol, long in resistance, and I was like, yeah, long in resistance, because that's what most people think. People are sitting there putting shorts on it at resistance levels, and that gives you this short squeeze to get like a 20% day almost, 20% day.
I just feel 48k is not as far as people think it is. Like I said, it's just been ingrained in everyone. People are just in this negative mindset right now when it comes to the markets. But we've got potential banks going to start collapsing, like Raoul Powell's index tweet, like he tweeted earlier. We saw earlier on within this year, that how that affected Bitcoin. We've got ETFs coming in, we've got institutions coming in right now. And I saw something on Twitter that we were speaking about earlier, that there was a clip of someone stating that people forget that crypto got to a $3 trillion market cap without institutional support. And where do you think that's going to go when we've got institutions like BlackRock, who are so powerful and have, you know, access to all this liquidity and capital? When they get involved in Bitcoin, where do you think it's going to go after that? And it's going to move so quick that people aren't really going to have a time to react. Like, at what point does the market now, even at 35k, sit there and think, this is the rally? What point do you think that is?
No way, no point until you get up towards all-time highs.
Until,
I think between now and all-time highs, like, people are going to slowly trickle, but like keep denying it. It's basically what happens in every single crypto bull run. By the time we get to 50 to 69,000, if we do go on to set all-time highs, like there's always the chance that this is just a retracement. We go and set a lower low for Bitcoin. That was always a possibility. We haven't tested any retracement levels at the high end, like the 702, 786, which are like anywhere between like 48 and 56k. Just off the top of my head, I can't remember. But like between those times and all-time high, that's when you start to see like general media start to pick back up again on crypto, and trends start to appreciate for it, because right now, like, no one's talking about it. Even people in the space don't really believe it. There's not a lot of supply, so price squeezes quite easily. But when you get up to those higher levels, that's when the general public start, like, you'll get some early movers who are actually late movers really, but the early movers in this cycle will start looking at it again. And then we'll start to see all-time highs broken. That's when you get like a FOMO rally that pushes you to real highs. But until then, I don't really think much changes.
Yeah, I don't know, because I was speaking off camera before. I feel like I've not felt this way about crypto since I first got involved in the space, which was like 2019, when we really started to attack 20k, and then that first leg up to 40k. And I don't feel like I felt like that until now. And I guess we're still kind of early to it in terms of the grand move that we're expecting to see of potential all-time highs. But when we do start to get above, I think, like $48,000, I think that's when you're going to get your early retail movers.
That's what I mean, yeah.
And then as soon as we hit all-time highs, and that hits like your news channels, that Bitcoin has now set a new all-time high, people are going to start searching into it again, because they don't want to potentially miss out on a move that they missed out on last time. Because they'll think retail investors will think that's early. When they see, like, if they have a look at a standard price chart, even if you've not invested, and obviously anyone with a brain can see that in every cycle we set a great to higher high. As soon as they see that 70k mark breached, that's when people will start piling in, because that's when they buy into it. That's when they'll feel a bit more comfortable and less risk averse to potentially buying Bitcoin as well.
Yeah, buying into the narrative, really. Yeah. They buy into the FOMO. The retail literally create the FOMO.
Yeah.
So we should start to see like Google Trends and stuff start to push up those sorts of things there. That's what I'd be looking for.
And the ETF can obviously facilitate that. And
well, that brings the hype.
Yeah, that can happen like any. I know we said this last week, and a lot of people have been saying it before, but we haven't been like closer to it right now. And I know that might sound a bit daft, because obviously as time goes on we get closer to these deadlines. But with what was it yesterday, the IBTC, where was that?
Yeah, that was like on the DTCC, so like the Digital Trust Clearing Corporation or something. And
they've opened seeding rounds as well, haven't they?
Yeah, potentially open seed. Like, it's all like, nothing's been confirmed by BlackRock or the SEC yet, so it's all like up in the air. But that's, from what I understand, the person who tweeted that as well is a senior ETF analyst at Bloomberg, who tweeted it initially. I obviously found it on the DTCC website as well, put that out there. In fact, I tweeted that out before him, just FYI. I didn't actually do that. But then, yeah, he tweeted it, confirming it and that. So what basically that showed is like a pre-filing, and whether that means we get an ETF this week, next month, whatever, it means that essentially I think it's coming, and like we thought that anyway.
Yeah.
The thing that I said in the newsletter this week was the two things that you need for a crypto rally is one, hype, and two, liquidity. Hype's coming, like we can see the hype on the way now from this sort of thing. Liquidity's been the thing that I've been worried about, but then you're starting to see the DXY collapse.
Yeah.
The DXY has been dropping down, and that's been normally inversely correlated with crypto in general. There's issues in the bond market. That's not my area of expertise really. But as we talked about in the start of this podcast, like when you have all these like issues going on around the world, people want some sort of flight to quality, flight to safety. In a new digital world, some of that money, in my opinion, is going to go to crypto, especially if it starts to get regulation around it. Yeah. Start to get some sort of parameters for institutions to be able to move some of their capital into it as well. Like with the BlackRocks, that's when we start to see big rallies.
It's the perfect time for BlackRock to come in and introduce a Bitcoin Spot ETF, because especially when the cracks are starting to show even more now in like the US economy. Obviously, like you said, DXY is now started to show signs of weakness. We've got banks potentially running into trouble, and we'll put out a great tweet, I think it was yesterday or today, what a great way for institutions to protect their wealth by investing into a BlackRock's Spot ETF, whilst the traditional financial system experiences some sort of downturn.
Yeah.
And is that going to start, are we going to start to see a bit of a, like, you know, change from the price of Bitcoin to your traditional like S&P 500 and Nasdaq? Because obviously historically they've both been positively like correlated. They both move together. They do. Obviously Bitcoin's been a lot more volatile, but that's just been a grand narrative that they both move in the same direction. But now are we starting to see that breakaway in the early stages? As traditional finance kind of struggles a bit, people are looking for this alternative, which we've had this conversation when we first got into crypto, is that when that happens, that's when we're going to start to see these true green candles everyone's looking for.
Yeah, and I think that another thing that I talked about in that tweet specifically is that people are looking for an alternative to the banking system. Yeah. But what better time for BlackRock to introduce the ETF, because institutions then can look for an alternative, but they don't leave the US dollar banking system. And that's the important part about it. Like if they wanted to buy spot Bitcoin ETF right now, that money technically leaves the dollar system and goes into Bitcoin. People are holding that actual spot asset. If they hold spot Bitcoin ETF at BlackRock, their dollars stay within BlackRock. Yeah. BlackRock hold the Bitcoin and they hold the dollars. So they are getting exposure to it, but it never leaves the dollar system. So if people get panicked, the dollar starts printing, they go, okay, look, we need to have exposure to an asset that's got a fixed supply like Bitcoin. They then go to BlackRock, oh, can we buy some of this Bitcoin ETF that's regulated from you? BlackRock say yes, the government in America basically still control it because it's within the American jurisdiction. It's within BlackRock, it never leaves the dollar. They keep the dollar in BlackRock and they keep the Bitcoin in BlackRock. It's kind of like a win-win for the American financial system.
Well then, that's interesting because I've never actually thought of it like that, but then that just baffles me even more to why the SEC haven't introduced any sort of spot ETF product. Like we even had Hester Pierce come out and say the other day it baffles her that they've not introduced such product, and she would have introduced it 5 years ago, because like you said, it's a great way to keep everything in the dollar while still giving them exposure to maybe a different alternative asset class, which is Bitcoin. Which is just baffling, and it really does make me believe that we're going to see it sooner rather than later.
Well, it's probably because during the bear market, BlackRock wanted to buy as much as they could.
I guess this just proves that there's obviously more to it than a lot of people. We obviously suspected things were like this were happening. Like, again, if you're involved within the crypto space or the financial space in general, you know how this works. Like the big boys have to line their pockets before everyone else can make profits on this industry. Like there was never going to be a way, although obviously crypto is supposed to be this decentralized product, which it is, there was no way that these institutions weren't going to let it off without them profiting from it, positioning themselves correctly with it first, before everyone else made life-changing wealth.
Yeah, and a great example of that is gold, that we talked about. We saw a gold ETF introduced in 2003. Between 2003 and 2011, gold had an 8-year bull market where it rose 500% over those 8 years.
Exactly, and now Bitcoin's obviously been labelled, historically been labelled since its inception as the digital gold. So are we going to see an 8-year bull run for Bitcoin? Maybe obviously still small peaks and troughs, but are we actually going to see the sustained bear markets that we've experienced like now.
Yeah,
And in the other cycles.
will we ever see that again? It probably dampens volatility, but probably pushes it to the upside like indefinitely, at least for a short period, like a period. The other thing that we've talked about is like how Bitcoin's price is going to react now, and I gave this opinion in a previous episode, is that I think it's going to go to around 300,000, but could we go to 160,000, then have a bit of a dampener when like people slow down it a little bit, and then into 2025, 2026 we have like a second push up to 300,000 odd. That's what I think could be happening, because those 2025, 2026 is when I think, if I'm right with my calls on the markets in general, that's when we're going to see max liquidity and like stimulus coming out, although I do think we'll see some next year with the election. So between now and 2026 we're looking nice, like whatever happens, like we could have a pullback. And this is always the thing about my thesis as well, and why I scream so loud for people to buy. I said, look, even if I'm wrong about the all-time high this year, I think Bitcoin price is going to be higher at the end of the year than it is at the start. So getting exposure now, you're not going to be doing anything particularly wrong. And even if it is next year that we have the rally and we break all-time highs, I was screaming at 18k. Now we're at 35. Like, let's say we stay at 35 for the rest of the year, or come back down to 30 and then go up to 45.
Yeah.
We're still at 45 by the end of the year, and I was saying at 18. Yeah. So that's always been my thesis, is like, I'm not driving the wrong message. Even if I'm wrong, I don't think I'm going to be wrong to the downside. Like, I just think I'm not going to quite hit my targets. But I obviously think that we're going to break all-time highs. That's why I've been saying it so much. I've not been saying that for like clickbait or anything. The opposite. I get less clicks because I'm bullish when everyone's bearish.
Yeah. Okay, so obviously Bitcoin's still flying. Like we said, it's testing 35k. We've had a short break and it's still flying right now. XRP's also on the move. Everything's on the move right now. For those people out there who are potentially getting a bit overwhelmed with what to do next, have they missed a boat on Bitcoin? Where do they invest? Or is it, like I said, is it too late for them? What do you think? What advice would you give to them? Because in my opinion, like we say on other episodes, you can't just be looking at single, like, you know, the Bitcoin price chart. You need to be taking other things into consideration, like Bitcoin dominance, total market cap, for instance. Because obviously people say once the Bitcoin dominance cools off, there's going to be potential opportunities in altcoins, and we're going to get into specifics on XRP because we've done a lot of, you know, research into that. We'll put a few tweets out, and it's actually coming into fruition as we're recording this right now. So someone who's sitting on the sideline right now, who's not made any money from this move up, what would you do now if you're in their shoes? You've not deployed any capital into the market, but you want to get involved. You want to get involved who potentially are thinking about FOMOing it.
Well, before we get into that, the first thing that I would do is join our Discord. We're creating a Discord right now. We're going to put our market ideas, trade ideas out there, market analysis. We're going to have a free section, a premium section. So that's actually the first thing that I do, because I'm going to spend a lot of my time in there, like putting my refined market analysis out there. Second thing I'd do is just don't panic, don't rush into anything. But there's very conflicting information out there right now. Like if you look at the short-term indicators, so like the RSI, for example, on the hour, 4 hour for Bitcoin, we're looking pretty hot. Even the daily, we're looking like overbought territory. The weekly is just wicking into overbought, but this is where something contradictory comes into the picture, which not a lot of people think, because it kind of goes against what the overbought area for the RSI indicates. So when Bitcoin, historically, in the last 2 times Bitcoin has hit the overbought section, bear in mind that the first time was actually in the bear market, a pre-C19 rally, and the second time was when we actually had the huge rally up for Bitcoin. We rallied either 149% or around 400%. If we rallied 149% from the current price action, that would take us to all-time highs around 79 to 80,000. If we rallied 400%, it would take us to around $200,000.
Yeah, just something I want to add to that, RSI. So you just said that once it enters over bought territory, it can still obviously have that scope to go on and go even higher, basically.
Well, not that it can. In fact, it has in the last 2 occasions. In fact, in the last 3 occasions, it's massively rallied on the back of that, which is obviously contradictory.
Yeah, so just obviously take momentum indicators with a pinch of salt. Obviously, they're there for guidance, but use them in the right way, and don't let it, obviously, just because it entered that territory, think, oh no, that's it, the move's over. Because even if you do examine charts, maybe open a chart right now on TradingView and try and find this on whatever time frame you want to see. Once it enters overbought territory and it comes back into like normally below 70 and then experiences another leg up, sometimes the price actually sets a higher high than the actual previous high. Whereas the oscillator, obviously the RSI in this instance, is showing like a lower high. And this is when you actually use an RSI to its maximum like capabilities, because that's showing a bearish divergence.
Correct.
So don't let these indicators put you off entering the market if your general thesis is more upside. So that's just one thing, and that's just personal advice that I'll give you, because that's something that I've kind of learned recently, because I was not suffering from that, but that's the mistake I was making in using momentum indicators.
Yeah, and also, like I was saying, our Discord is going to be a place where we can talk about this with you. And I also do think that a lot of the focus is going to be around Bitcoin, especially if we see more and more news. But it's really good to have someone who's got some experience of previous cycles, because there's probably more percentage gains to be made in other places if you have missed this initial move.
Yeah.
Whether there's a pullback or not, it's a bit risky now to be getting some exposure. I'd probably be looking in other places, which we will talk about, and specifically XRP, which I think we're going to get onto now.
Yeah, we'll go into XRP. Just before we do go into XRP, like for instance, in the Discord, we're going to be talking about, we pulled up this Bitcoin dominance, like cheat sheet almost earlier, what happens when Bitcoin dominance goes down and Bitcoin's price goes up, and how this affects altcoins. And it actually is played out to a T right now with what we're seeing, and how you could have potentially capitalized on that information and got into certain altcoins, or just stuck with Bitcoin in this particular instance. So there's going to be a lot of like educational articles flying your way. It's not just, here's a trade idea, do what you want with it kind of thing. We're going to obviously be discussing it with you and just providing as much value and education to you guys as much as we can. That's what the aim of the Discord. It's not just to everyone put this trade on or trade idea on and make money from it. It's not just that kind of thing.
Yeah, and like, we're not always right.
No, of course
I'm just sharing the information that we've had in the past, and it just so happens to be that I've just been nailing it recently. Like we talked about, I've traded an account up like 1,500% from the start of the year.
Exactly.
And like, it doesn't mean that I'll continue that, but
no, of course, there's going to be losses. Obviously, not every trade you're going to hit a loss streak when it comes to trades, of course. But that's just the reason that we've got to that point is it's like an accumulation of tips and tricks we've learned from trading like a few bull and bear markets, basically, because you learn a lot in these bull and bear markets, and we're about potentially on the precipice of entering another bull market, and we're here to guide you through that next stage, because I'd say, and everyone says this as well, bull markets are notoriously known for being harder to navigate because it moves a lot quicker. Certain things matter a lot more in bull markets, in upward price moves like volume, open interest, all that kind of things. And this is the stuff we're going to teach you guys. This is the stuff we're going to relay to you guys within the Discord. So there's a lot of information coming.
And if we do go up like a lot in price, there's going to be a lot of moves to capture.
Yeah,
there's going to be upside and downside moves to capture on that way up.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just identifying those periods. But going into XRP, because like I said, it's topical right now, because at the time of recording this, we've just experienced another pop up on like shorter time frames. It's like 6.5% up since the start of this recording.
Hopefully it still is.
Hopefully it still is. Not to the chance it's down.
Oh boy.
But this is something that we would have put into our Discord, for example, because we looked at the relationship between Bitcoin's price movements and XRP's price movements, and how there's like a slight delay between the two. Do you want to? I'll let you explain it.
Yeah, they are correlated, but not necessarily correlated like one for one in moves. Normally, because XRP and most alts specifically have a lower market cap, obviously, than Bitcoin, they move up a higher percentage than Bitcoin following Bitcoin's move. So normally what happens is liquidity will flow into Bitcoin, then into the larger alt caps, and then the smaller caps. So it normally goes like Bitcoin, ETH, everything else is a normal cycle. But what I've noticed recently with XRP, maybe because of the clarity with the lawsuit as well, is that XRP actually took a huge chunk of the Bitcoin liquidity when XRP was deemed a non-security by Judge Torres. Again, it came like 23 days after Bitcoin's previous spike. XRP then did a big spike. So the previous Bitcoin spike, Bitcoin moved up 19%. About 23 days later, XRP moved up 100%. So far on this move, Bitcoin has moved up around 30%. So using that same math, you would give us about a $1.35 XRP price. That's why we give a target of between 89 cents and 135, just in case we repeat the previous move. The big resistance I've specifically been targeting for years, and I've written about it for years. When I appeared on Digital Perspective show about 6 months ago, I talked about the exact same issues that we've got. 55 to 59 cent is a real big resistance area or support area. When we're above it, it's a very reactionary level, and we're just fringing on trying to clear that, or we were before the podcast, but there's a lot of like sell pressure in that area. So I wouldn't be surprised if we whip back down, but when we get a good clean break of that area is when we see explosive price movement, either to the upside or the downside for XRP, giving me those easy targets. I'm also using a new trading tool that we've got called Trading Different, which we have an affiliate link for, which we can drop in the description of this video. You can see the pools of liquidity. The next pool above 59 cent is at around 64 cents. So that's another 10% move where there's not a lot of resistance between there. So if we start to see a bit of a squeeze in that liquidity pool, basically shorts closing out, meaning they have to buy positions, that probably pushes us up towards the next level. And then we're looking at like the 64 cent to be like squeezing them out as well.
Again, that's another tool you can expect in the Discord. A lot of people don't have access to like these kind of softwares because it's obviously fairly pricey for an average like retail investor to have, because I think it was like what, £700 to £800 a year.
Yeah.
So it's quite a lot of money, obviously, and for what you get out of it, obviously it's valuable to us. Like we've pretty much made that value back in the space of like the 2 weeks that we've had access to.
Well, last night's trade, it helped me nail 35k exactly for Bitcoin yesterday, because the heat map was basically saying, or the liquidity area was basically saying that was between like 33 and 35k, and I thought that would short squeeze us up to about 33 to 33,500. I thought that would short squeeze us up to 35,000, and I had a trade on that overnight that we talked about at the start of the video. Got in about 29,000, got out literally on 35k, it wicked up to that, and now we're back up towards that level, but it was a nice move.
Exactly, and then we were preempting that, because I was literally here last night at Will's place here in Dubai, and we said, yes, the liquidity pools are at 33k, but what's going to happen on the back of that short squeeze up to 35k? Boom, it happened overnight. Obviously, it happened a lot quicker than we thought it would, but inevitably, it happened like we thought it would.
And that's kind of the point I want to make actually about XRP as well. It's like, yes, we've had this initial price move, but I personally believe the long-term or medium-term picture for XRP is looking great as well. With the institutional money coming into Bitcoin with potential regulation, you're also seeing XRP that has been deemed a non-security and has that certainty about being a non-security. Maybe ETH's in that bracket as well, maybe it's not. We haven't had a complete designation for ETH yet from everybody, but a judge has literally ruled that XRP is not a security. So when we get some eyes back on the space, liquidity starts to flow, I do think a lot of that liquidity is going to flow into XRP.
Look, we're obviously big holders on XRP, so it almost sounds like we're just bigging it up for the sake of bigging it up, but XRP is looking bullish at the moment. You're looking at the weekly chart. We've taken on the RSI, we've like crossing bullish with the SMA. We're taking MAs as well on a weekly time frame. I think the MA right now, the 200 MA sits around 55 cent. We're at 59 cent right now. Obviously, it's Tuesday. We're still early on in the week. But if we get a nice weekly close, the long-term picture for not just for Bitcoin, but for XRP and certain altcoins as well, in terms of risk to reward, is looking just phenomenal. Especially you've got to take into consideration that in the last cycle, like we spoke off camera and everyone knows, XRP was suppressed ever so slightly because it was under this lawsuit with the SEC. So what does that mean for XRP? Like if we do end up going into this euphoria stage now for Bitcoin, and Bitcoin does head up towards all-time highs, people forget all-time highs for XRP sits at $3.20, between $3.20 and $3.60. Like people forget that. Yeah,
and if you use any sort of technical analysis, you know that the longer the consolidation, the higher the upside break, or the higher the expansion. Exactly. XRP's been consolidating for 5 years. Like I talked to you about off camera this morning, the all-time high for last cycle, if you use the same sort of pushes that Bitcoin and Ethereum did, which is what XRP did the cycle before, Fibonacci retracement and extension tools, you're looking at $10 to $13. So we missed out on that. Are we going to get that plus another extension this cycle? That's what the accumulation would say from being consolidated for such a long time. But even if not, we're heading for the $10 to $13 range in our price targets personally. So that's where we're looking for XRP. And the other side of that is you've got almost a call option on XRP. It's like holding a lottery ticket of the fact that if we do head to a more CBDC centric world where they need a neutral bridge currency, Ripple have been in the back door with all of these banks for a long, long time. We get some real world utility. We haven't worked out or even seen any world where crypto has a real world utility and how that will affect price discovery. We haven't seen that yet. So there's no way you can fairly value a crypto because it's not something we've yet seen. So I really think that this is the reason why I've been so bullish and I've held so much XRP. It's not because I'm a specific maxi, it's because everything for me is pointing towards why it's a good asset to hold, whilst at the same time you have the same bet as Ethereum and Bitcoin, being that it's a large cap crypto that's had some really, really bad news over the top of it being the SEC case, and it hasn't capitulated. It stayed in the top 10 in market caps during the worst news ever. Now we've got some good news, potentially got some hype going back to the crypto market, and potentially about to have some more bullish news and some liquidity flowing in. Like, the stars are aligning in some way, and you've got the digital euro, for example, pushing towards CBDCs. And even if they don't work with XRP specifically and Ripple, we know the CBDC narrative pushes towards XRP. So as soon as more people try and jump on that hype and that trend, more eyes go into XRP. Yeah. And one thing that a lot of people don't take into consideration, it's going to sound stupid to say, but if you're a retail investor and you come into the space and you look at the top 10 cryptos, XRP looks the cheapest. It's 50 cent or 55 cent, 59 cent, whatever it is right now. Bitcoin is at 35,000, ETH's at what, 1,800 or whatever ETH's at. XRP is at 50 cent. People are like, oh, I want some of that. I can get more of it. I can get like...
It does sound stupid, but like the reason
I did that.
That's what I was just about to say. The reason I'm laughing is because when I first got into crypto, one of the reasons why I didn't jump straight into Bitcoin because I was like, well, that's really expensive.
Yeah.
Like, I want to own one of something. And I know it sounds really stupid, but people who just want exposure to crypto in general, that thought process actually does go through that in their mind, which is ridiculous. But yeah, obviously, I don't know if we've mentioned it in this podcast already, but I'll just repeat it. But obviously, we've got rumours that the SEC case is going to go, SEC versus Ripple case is going to completely be settled, the last remaining part to it. And then we've also got Ripple Swell coming up in November. So
yeah, I've heard 9th of November for the settlement, before the 9th of November, and then Swell was like early November as well. I can't remember
obviously, just bear in mind, obviously, it could be with these certain events that go on, it could be like sell the news kind of thing on the actual event, but. There's still, what I'm trying to say is there's still a lot going on with XRP. A lot of people kind of think SEC case is just completely over. There's no more good things to look forward to, but there is, and obviously we've still got potential partnerships to come out.
Oh yeah.
When they would have been ourselves, so we don't know, but.
Well, like, for people who don't know this, I think we talked about it in a previous episode, but James Wallace, who's head of CBDCs at Ripple, he said that they're in talks or at some stage of piloting with 20% of the world's central banks for CBDC development.
That's crazy.
But no one likes it, no one cares because XRP has been such a footed coin. You make your own mind up.
You do make your own mind up.
You don't have to even listen to what we're saying, we're just giving you the information that we know. It's not like I don't sit here and just cheer it on for like no reason. Like you can see that I've done the research.
What I'm saying is people would be potentially watching this would feel like, oh, you're just fanboying XRP for the sake of it. But what I'm trying to say is there's fact behind this fanboy.
Yeah, and that's kind of good though, because if people have that reaction, like whenever they do to like a Bitcoin maxi or whatever, Bitcoin maxis don't give facts like this.
Yeah, true.
They don't give facts. They just say, oh, it's just the best network. And then they'll just regurgitate the same thing. It's the most secure, it's been around for the longest. But they don't give you any sort of, like why it's going to be prosperous in the future.
Exactly.
There's nothing extra to Bitcoin apart from the store of value narrative, which I'm not against. I think Bitcoin's going to have a space, and I think it's going to be good, and it could keep the largest market cap forever. We don't know, but we're just saying what potential there is for XRP from the research that we've done.
What we're saying?
That's it.
Yeah.
I think that's it. Yeah. By the way, join our Discord exclusively with BitGet.
Yeah. So
that's an announcement.
We're working with BitGet. If you do want to enter the Discord, you will have to provide us with a UID to get a part of that. So just so you know, obviously it's fully transparent. You join our Discord. As soon as you get land onto the Discord, you get a massive pop-up page explaining absolutely everything you need to know. It's super easy. If you've got any questions, just drop either me, Will, or it's Ragnar, who's also going to be involved in this as well, a DM, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. But yeah.
Yeah, and there's a free section.
There's a free section, obviously, where the free section, just to plug it quickly, is for a section where the community is going to be able to speak with one another. Everyone can voice their opinions on the market, and we'll obviously pop in there here and there and maybe drop a couple of trades in there. But obviously that's mainly for our paid section, so you have to appreciate that we need to provide more value to our paid section, of course, because that's what we're dedicating our time to right now. And but like I said, the free section is still going to be a really cool place to come in and keep updated, stay updated with the news, because the people who are already in our community are very knowledgeable in the space. Like they stay up to date with it, so they're also going to be sharing their knowledge in there. So come through, hang out, check it out,
enjoy,
and give us some feedback. Obviously, let us know how you think. Cool. Anything that you want us to improve on, we're going to implement it straight away, because we're not just, like I said at the start, it's not just a money grab. This is far from that, although it might seem like it. We're trying to provide as much value and insight to our community.
Yeah, and I think that it's an important time to be doing this, because working with an exchange now on a personal level gives us some more reach, which is what I want to do, and I want to help as many people as possible. If we can make some cash from it, great, but we're here to show you how we're making cash from this next upcoming market. Like I've been making money anyway, like I said to you, and like I spoke with the people at BitGet, I said, look, it's not about the money. It's not about the money. yes, some positive cash flow on a consistent level is great, but I'm doing good, like in terms of money anyway.
Exactly. If you watched episode 1, you know this is Will's first partnership since how many years now?
3 or 4
3
years.
years.
Yeah.
So it's not obviously been working with anyone, and Bit gets come across because we've got a contact who we're good friends with. So,
Yeah.
and that's why this has happened. So yeah.
He twisted my arm.
He's a good guy. Shout out Jamie.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll wrap this episode up. And yeah, keep your eyes on the market, guys. Keep your eyes on our social medias. There's a lot going on. Obviously, like I said, Discord, check that out as well. It's a good place to come in and check the news and stay updated with the latest market trends. And until next week.
Like, comment, subscribe, share.
Oh yeah, of course. Like, comment, subscribe, share it with all your friends, share it with your mum, whoever you want to share it with. And we'll catch you guys next week.
Right,
Peace
peace
up.
up, A-Town down, as Josh would say.